Welcome to the Path Forward podcast, sponsored by the Second Opportunity Program. I'm your host, Augie Ghilarducci, and thank you for joining us. So our episode today actually features somebody that I was incarcerated with, and we got to know each other pretty well. We were in the same dorm, and we were actually in the RDAP dorm in Duluth, Minnesota. And so I got to know Drew. Drew Carr is my guest, and Drew, welcome. And I'm looking forward to sharing your story with the people that are watching this.
Thanks, Augie. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it too.
I guess we'll dive right in. I'd like you to just kind of start with your background, where you grew up, what you did when you were a kid, if you played sports or what you were interested in, and we just want to walk up, kind of through to set the stage for what became how we met, and then in prison, and then what you've done since release.
Well, I was born and raised in Carmel, New York, which is about an hour northwest of New York City. I wrestled, played football, graduated. Initially, I wanted to go in the Marine Corps, but I couldn't get in because of a knee injury. So I went to college and went to Western Connecticut State University, where I played rugby there. And then after graduating from WestCon, I went out to Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa. And I was there for 4 years, played rugby there, was there for 4 years. Then I graduated, relocated to South Carolina for about a year. And then eventually we moved up to the Chicago area where I was in practice for 20 something years. And basically, I specialized in sports injuries. I was active in rugby up until I was 45 years old. I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I had a strong background in sports injuries because pretty much I had them all. And I'm a mess, but I'm all beat up. But uh, and then Wendy and I opened a gym. So we had a personal training gym and a chiropractic clinic all together.
And then something happened that took you off the path, and you want to talk about that just a little bit, please?
I was in a bad spot, and I made some really bad decisions, and I had to pay for those decisions, and I wind up getting 8 year sentence for insurance fraud. And on that 8 years, I did 6 years. The first 24 months was at the county facility, and then MCC Chicago, which was horrible. County time is the hardest time, and then eventually I went up to Duluth, Minnesota, and that's where I did the rest. I think I did just about 4 years there, maybe 3.5 years there, and that was easy time compared to what county life is like.
So thanks for sharing that. I'd like to talk about how you did your time. So obviously county, and it is tough. I'm in county jails every week, and there's very little to do, and time I'm sure moves much more slowly. But I'd like to focus on how you did your time to prepare for release, and how maybe the way you did your time helped you to release, and ultimately to that led you or helped lead you to your career.
It really started with county. So building up to getting arrested and getting confined, I was under so much pressure. The pressure of before you know what's going to happen to you is horrible. Like I made the analogy, it's like walking around with a piano over your head with just a fishing line. And at any point it could be cut. So the stress level was unbearable. When I got to county, at least I was able to relax a little bit. And I realized that I have to work on myself because all these decisions that I made, everything that was happening to me was my fault. I was making bad decision after bad decision. I was out of control. I was lying, cheating, stealing, wasn't honest with myself, and basically ruined a lot of good relationships because of my behavior. And once I got to county, I realized that I need to work on myself because when I get out, all these people aren't going to be around anymore. They're going to be done with me. So I got very involved with Bible studies there. I helped teach some classes there. I was as active as possible for what they had available. They had like Celebrate Recovery, AA, Malachi Dads. These are all programs, religious based, Bible based, to help you improve, who you are. And then when I got to Duluth, it was like a weight was taken off because I could actually see sunshine I haven't seen fresh, I haven't smelled fresh air or seen the sunshine in 19 months or 20, almost 20 months. So the fact that I could go to the camp and just sit outside at a picnic table and read a book was incredible. But what I did there is I did the education classes. Actually, you taught a few of them. I remember doing those. I got my associate or my certificate in construction technology up at the education center. I did the non-res RDAP. I took every class I possibly could that was offered and worked out every day, walked the track every day. I was surrounded by a good group of guys. There's like five of us that we were all there for about the same time, got along great, and just try to just be positive and work out every day, try to eat as healthy as possible. I read a lot. I think I counted up that I think I read over 500 books while I was down. And I just try to keep myself active. And I think the secret to prison time is you just worry about today. Build that day with things. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't put a calendar on the wall. Don't check the calendar. Just worry about today because tomorrow will take care of itself. And I think what really profoundly changed me was RDAP. It really, uh, I made it a point to get the most out of it as I could because I knew, like I said, if I didn't change, I was going to come home to nobody. Nobody would want me around. So I took full advantage of what RDAP had to offer and made sure that I was the best person I could possibly be when I got out.
So just for those that, so Drew and I were in the Fed system, and RDAP is the drug program that's provided in the federal system. It's a well, he talked about non-res, which is non-residential. That's education courses about substance misuse and those types of things. But the actual RDAP program is residential. So we had about 140 guys in our dorm, and all of them were in the program. Some were waiting to be in the program, but fell under the same rules and had to do the um, same meetings every morning. And then all the way through those that were called DAP complete. So they had finished the program, but they remain in the dorm waiting to be released. And so most people, they'll stay in there and release right from the RDAP dorm because they try to measure when you start the program so that when you finish you have the least amount of time possible remaining for you to be released back to the well, will be to the halfway house. So when you talk about the things that you did in RDAP and how they might have shaped you, are there a few things that you could point to specifically and say, hey, this is some of the stuff that I learned that I really, even today after being out, I still rely upon?
Yeah, I would say just a rational thinking. Just I don't remember all the rules of rational thinking that we used to have to memorize, but basically trying to get all the information before I make decisions, listen before I react, take in what people have to say to me, and more importantly, don't take anything personally. When I came home, I went to, kind of through like a 12 step where all the people that I hurt, I reached out to them and I said, hey, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm not going to make excuses. I want to apologize and I hope you could forgive me. I didn't feel I could ask for forgiveness because I didn't want to ask of anything from anybody. Some people chose to forgive me, and we still have relationships to this day. And some people said no, but at least I tried. And at the end of the day, I could say at least I did my best to reconcile what I've done in the past. I can't change it. I could just apologize for it, and I could learn from it. And that's what I've done. But I think our depth especially was it wasn't so much the classes, but it was like the one-on-one time that you're sitting with somebody. Remember Dave Marion, um, sitting around with because Dave and I were in the same room together and just having real talk. Like people would just tell you what you wanted to hear, or tell you what you needed to hear, not what you wanted to hear, and just getting real live feedback and having the ability to listen to it, not take it personally, not to try to rebut, not to argue with people, just listen and say, hey, I see weak spots in your personality, and this is what they are. And listening to it and then having the willingness to change it to be a better person. And I use it to this day. Like, my sons, a lot of what we learned in our DAP, I talk to my sons because they're young men now. And I just give them, honest feedback from what I'm seeing. And I'm not attacking them. I'm just saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I think you need to do. You're making bad decisions. You're making good decisions. And, it seems to work. They're doing well in life. And What I said before or a while ago, I said, if I have to go through prison, I hope I can learn something to help people, especially my children. So maybe they won't make the bad decisions that I made. And having somebody that'll be accountable, that they'll be accountable to. I call my sons on a regular basis. Hey, what are you going on? What's going on? What are you doing? I call it my check-in phone call. It doesn't happen all the time, but at least once, twice a month, we'll talk. But everyone, all the time. But I'm just like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? What are your plans? What are you doing to achieve your plans? And what's your end goal and what you're trying to do? And we have dialogue back and forth. And I just want to hold them accountable because that's one thing I felt I had nobody that kept me accountable. I had no one to answer to. And the one person I did was accountable to was my wife, and I chose not to listen to her, which put me in that situation, from the beginning. So if I listened to her, we probably won't be having this conversation right now. But I was stubborn and stupid, and
Well, these are conversations I think we all have with ourselves at some point, right? We look back and say, how could I have done that? I mean, there was no way it was that it wasn't going to turn out badly. So when did you release?
I released in 2018. I was released to the halfway house sometime in March of 18.
Okay, so I got out in July of 17. I went to the halfway house. So less than a year, right? Maybe 9 months after me. But I'd like to talk for a minute, as long as we're having this conversation, about what halfway house time was like for you.
It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was just, to me, it was just the means to get to the next step. So, do you remember Joe Abate?
Sure.
Joe was nice enough to actually have a job waiting for me. And I was a helper on an ice cream truck. We used to make deliveries to like Walmart and CVS and places like that. And you remember Steve Klebowitz?
No.
Those two were good friends. You remember Big Tall Steve. Anyway, he was the driver and I was his helper. So
Oh, I'm
basically,
sorry, Steve. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. So I basically worked 6 days a week delivering ice cream. And then I did have to go through their 2 week orientation where you had to get all those classes checked and you just have to stay there at the halfway house. So that was tough, just because I was so excited about getting out and I just want to get on with my life. I'm a little bit hyper and I get a little impatient. So I'm trying to get 20 steps ahead and they just want to hold me back in the beginning. But once things opened up, I was able to go to release to the house when he had an apartment for us, and I had to get check, do the phone calls, the random phone calls, the random drug tests, and I was doing TDAT at the time, so it wasn't bad, except it was in Chicago, and I lived in Palatine at the time, so driving in for these meetings and things were a little tough. But like I said, it was always better than being back in Duluth. It was just one step closer to freedom.
And one of the things that I experience and that I observe in these types of conversations is that the excitement of getting out of prison and the thought of a halfway house is going to be so much better, and in some ways it clearly is. You're wearing your own clothes, and you can, you have much more variety of foods that you can choose from, and that type of thing. But we're still under house rules of what we have to do, and every time we get a paycheck, we got to be at the pay window to give them their 20% or 25%, whatever it was, and anytime we want to do something outside the norm of going to work or school, we had to get approved for a pass, and it's not that it was so much difficult to get approved, it's getting in front of the person that needed to approve it because they were either busy or it was their day off or that type of thing. So that's why I wanted to bring that in the conversation for those that are watching this that are getting close to releasing, and they're going to be going to a halfway house, to just kind of temper our expectations. It's not like we're moving into the Ritz Carlton, and we're going to come and go as we please. But certainly it's far better than being in prison. So I'd like to talk about your career at this point. So you're working on this ice cream truck, delivering to major stores and what have you, and 6 days a week. So staying busy with that certainly, but at some point you made a decision of what you wanted to do. So could you uh, kind of with some detail walk us through how that evolved and then what steps you specifically took to get to the career that you're in right now?
Well, it started at Duluth. I was supposed to, I don't want to say names, but I was supposed to sell windows for a company in Chicago. And one of the guys that we were there with was one of their sales reps. So he called the owner of the company, said, "Hey, I got a couple of guys. There's a couple of guys that that were involved in this. We get together for weekly training because there was a manual." So the idea was that I was going to come out, had a job selling windows in the Chicagoland area. So that was my plan. Getting my chiropractic license was not. I didn't know if I could or couldn't, so I didn't want to bank on it. So I had a plan A was to sell windows. Plan B was to do whatever else if plan B or plan A didn't work out. I didn't really have a plan B. And plan C was to get my chiro license. But I knew that was going to take time if I did it. So I needed something to make real money so, I could live. So when I was at the halfway house, um, I found out that the window sales opportunity, no pun intended, went out the window. So now I'm like, now what do I do? And it just so happened that you remember in the cafeteria at the halfway house, it's just everybody sits there. So you guys got coming in from the highs, the mediums. So it's just a mix of every inmate through the BOP. And it just so happened that there was one guy sitting by himself, and everything else, our normal 424 table was full, and or the Duluth table was full. And I just sat with this guy. I said, "Hey man, mind if I sit here?" I said, no problem. He was cool. We were talking. He was out Milan. And he goes, "What were you in for?" And I told him, and I said, "What were you in for?" And he told me, and we actually knew a few of the same people. So we started kind of connecting. And he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Funny you should say, I don't know, because I had my opportunity just go away." And he's like, "Have you thought about trucking?" And I said, "No." And I said, "Tell me about it." I said, "I know nothing about trucks." He says, "Well, either do I, but I'm planning on opening a trucking company." I said, "Okay." So what he told me was that I could go to truck driving school while at the halfway house because that was one of the things that's allowed. So for people in the Chicago area, Wolf's Trucking is a very good school to go to, and they're based out of Schaumburg. They're used to dealing with people in the halfway house, so they're very flexible with their scheduling. So I went and looked at the school, and yeah, I was approved, and I had to borrow money from my dad because I think it was 4,000 or $4,500. And what I realized is that the faster I got my CDL, the faster I could be making money. So what I did is I quit working on the ice cream truck, and I was able to program full time at the truck driving school. And my dad was generous enough to pay for the school. So I just had to focus on going to school. So every day, this was when I was in half at the at home confinement. We lived in Palatine, so I'd go to Schaumburg every day and go through their classes. And I forget what the classes were. I think it was like 120 hours of classroom time, 100 hours of observation, and then there was driving. Then you had the driving part of it, and I got through that as quickly as possible. So I started the school in July, and I had my CDL by September. Everything passed and done.
Can I pause 1 second? So I just want to go back for those that are listening on this. They and we this is in our second opportunity program, but they have through the Department of Labor, they have a WIOA program, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and that now pays for CDL. So if you're coming out of jail or prison, you can go through WIOA, which again is funded by the United States Department of Labor, and and you can it's paid for. And the reason, Drew, I wanted to bring that up is if there's men and women that are watching this that say, "Man, there's no way I can get my hands on $4,500." I don't want them to tune out. I want them to know that everything you're talking about with the career is going to be the same. It's just the Department of Labor is going to write the check for it.
Great. And so I think what intrigued me about trucking was a couple of things. One, the trucking industry doesn't care about what you did. They don't look at your felony background and go, "Wow, you did this." No, nobody cared. I don't know about violence and different things like that. I just know for white collar and drug cases, they didn't care. And I like the fact that you could work as hard as you want. You're only limited by as hard as you want to work. And I like the fact that I could start my own trucking company at some point because I've always been self-employed and I am kind of entrepreneurial. So I thought, okay, I could drive for somebody for a year or two, get the experience that I need, so the insurance companies will allow me to be an owner operator, and then I could buy a truck and then be an owner operator, and then from there buy another truck, and so on and so on. And that was my mindset was to get a small trucking business going as quickly as possible.
And how did that work out for you?
Good. If you show the picture, you'll see that there's two trucks. The red one's a Peterbilt. I bought that one within, I think, a year of getting my CDL. And so, real quick, so the guy that I sat with at the halfway house started his own company. So when I got some time driving for a company driver, Moran Transportation for the Chicago people, they are felon friendly. They're a really good company to work for. They had no problem hiring me, and there's a bunch of felons there. After I got some experience, I was able to buy my truck, and then I signed on with my friend's company as an owner operator. And it went well. I was making good money, doing well. Even through COVID, when COVID hit, we were shut down for maybe a week, but other than that, we kept rolling and did well. And then what we were doing is taking the profits from the truck and turning it into buying more trucks. So at one point, we had 7 trucks and just kept, taking, like I said, taking the profits, rolling it over, and buying more. And the thought process was more trucks, more money. And it worked out until the Ukraine war happened, and then diesel prices went up to over $6 a gallon, and freight dropped in half. So it was pretty much a perfect storm for a trucking disaster, and a lot of people went out of business. A lot. Luckily, we didn't. We didn't go bankrupt. It hurt. We took a beating for sure, but we were able to weather the storm.
And so, as an owner operator, can you explain what that's about? Like, who handles the expenses, like your insurance and those types of things? How does that work?
Okay, so as an owner operator, you they usually will pay you. They pay you more money, but a lot of the expenses come out of your side. So you have to pay. They'll take care of all your insurance, but you have to pay for it. So they'll pay for your insurance, or they'll cover your insurance. They'll use their tags. It's called an apportion tag, and then they'll also their IFTA sticker. I don't know if you know what IFTA is, but it's how they get their fuel taxes. You'll see the little stickers on the side of the trucks, and they're different colors for different years. So they'll do all that. So basically, what they'll do is let's say the truck made, easy numbers, $10,000 for the week. Then they start taking their deductions out. They'll take out fuel because normally they have a fuel card that has a discount. So they'll take out your fuel, your tags, your IFTA, your logs, your ELDs, all that comes out, and then you get what's left over. And then that's the profits of the truck.
When you say they, that's the trucking company that you're working for, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you might see, if you're driving down the road, you might see looking for owner operators, looking for company drivers, looking for owner operators. So what they do is they have their authority number, and that's the number on the side of the truck. So they're going through all the safety regulations, the FMSCA's, all of the things that they need to go through, and they manage all that. So what they normally do is they take usually 15% for expenses for managing the truck, dispatching it, and doing all the behind the scenes stuff, and then they take out the expenses, fuel, insurance, tags, and all that. And then you get like what's called a run statement, and you can see where all the expenses come out, and then you get what's left over.
And who arranges the actual contract with the company that's using the trucking services, that's paying the trucking services? Do you do that as the owner operator, or does the trucking firm do that?
They'll send you a contract. You have to have a contract that's kept in the truck to be an owner operator, and that means that you're signed on with them and you're under their authority number. And it's just a legal contract that says it basically lays out all the things, like I said, like who's responsibilities and costs for the most part.
But as far as the ABC Manufacturing wants their product to be shipped from Chicago to Racine, Wisconsin, who arranges that? Is that you as the owner operator, or is it the company that you're driving for?
So how trucking works is there's several different ways. One is you could have what's called a dedicated route. So Augie Dilladucci sells widgets, and he works with Drew Carr's trucking company, and only Drew Carr will move Augie's widgets. Or what you could do is you put that load out, your load of widgets out on a load board, and then people bid for it. And who's bidding for it are the dispatchers for trucking companies. So you'll see like screens of loads that are out there, and dispatchers are looking to see like what it pays per mile, how many miles, how many stops, and then they'll bid on it if they get it, and then they'll send it to a driver and say, "Hey, I have a job for you that's going from Georgia to Racine for X amount of dollars. You want it? Yes. Boom, they book it. And then they send you everything that you need to get that load. It's called a BOL, bill of lading. And then once you have that, then that's your load. Then you go pick it up and deliver it.
My understanding is that you can financially do very well in the field of trucking. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, yes, and no. Uh, right before the Ukraine war went, we were doing very, very well. I was actually out of the truck and managing a business from the beach on our laptop. It was wonderful. And then the Ukraine war hit and it damn near bankrupted us. And I had to actually get back into a truck. And over time, we did sell them off. But the answer is if you're an owner operator with your own truck, yes, you could do well. You could do very well for yourself. You're only limited by as much as you want to work. I normally work 40 weeks out of the year. Um, but some guys live in their truck, like literally live in their truck. They're going to commit to this lifestyle for 5 years and they drive probably 50 weeks a year. And if they want to take, I don't know if you're familiar with hours of service. If you want me to, I can explain that real quick.
Sure.
Okay, so in trucking, there's four clocks that we have to manage. One is we can only work 70 hours in an 8 day period. On the one day that you do work, you only have 14 hours to work and 11 hours to drive. So at the end of all these times when you run out, you have to do what's called a 34-hour reset, which means you cannot move the truck for 34 hours. We call that your 34. And that's when people that are living out of the truck they'll pick a city that maybe they want to go to, and then they'll make sure that they get a load to that city and they'll shut down and then they'll, hang out for a couple days and that to them, they'll go get a hotel and just get out of the truck for a few days and just take it easy and not have to worry about the truck. I don't do that. That's a little bit too much for me. What I like to do is I like my home time. I miss my wife. I was away for 6 years and I hate being away from her for, 6 minutes, never mind, going out for a long period of time. But what I do is I normally go out for anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks and I usually take a week off. And that seems to be working for us.
And I guess that's the point that I wanted to raise is that there's a obviously making money. There's the sacrifice that goes along with that, and the sacrifice is because you and I talked about this on the phone when we connected a couple of weeks ago. Is that the sacrifice is that you're on the road a lot, and it's not it for you. I mean, for most, it's not an easy life to be away from home like that. But it's part of the gig if people want to do this, and that's why I thought it was important that people that are sitting there thinking about, I think I would like to get into trucking, want them to see both sides of the equation, not just the fact that you can make some good money, but also the fact that here's some sacrifice that goes along with it.
Yeah. Well, without reward, there's no sacrifice. So the sacrifice is you're away from home. You work a lot and it's a tough life. It really is. You could be super unhealthy. I mean, I try to stay as healthy as possible on the road. I have weights in the truck. I try to eat as clean as possible. I try to walk every day, but I don't do it every day. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, I work out every day. Sometimes you just don't. If you stop somewhere and it's raining, I'm not going to get out and walk in a rainstorm. Things like that. But yeah, it's not the best job if you have a young family. I mean, all our kids are out of the house, so and Wendy's used to being by herself anyway, so it works for us, but it can be tough and it gets old. After a while, you're just like, I just need to get out of this truck and get away from everything. Just like at any job, I guess.
So first, I want to again say I so much appreciate your time and your willingness to share your story. And the whole idea here is to bring hope and inspiration on the inside so that people are thinking, what am I going to do when I get out? Is there a path for me? How am I going to make a living? How am I going to take care of my responsibilities? What I'm going to ask you to do is take, I don't know, a couple of minutes and just kind of look into the camera. And right now, I'm asking you to talk to the men and women that are inside um, jails and prisons around the country. And there's some pretty dark days in there, and maybe just share with them, your path wasn't the way it was defined. You were going to get a job selling windows, and this is where your mind was set walking out the door. And we've always got to have a plan B because plan A didn't work, and so you were able to pivot to get yourself into a good career. And so if you just take a couple of minutes to just talk to the men and women on the inside.
I could tell you that there's hope waiting for you on the other side. There's hopefully you have people that'll be there to support you, but basically it's going to come down to is how hard you want to work and what you're willing to do for that. And there's opportunities out there. They're not easy, some of them. However, they are there, and it seems more and more they're more felon friendly than they ever been, from what I'm seeing. But if you're there now, just start thinking about what you want to do. I guess look at what got you there and try to change the person you are. And you could tell your family members all day long that you're a changed person and you're not that person, you're not doing those things anymore. But actions are going to speak louder than words. And there's an expression, show me, don't tell me. And that's the attitude that you have to have. The one thing that I made a mistake while this in my mind was that when I came home, I was expected to be treated like a returning war hero for some reason. And I'm this changed person. I've been all this self growth. I'm a better person. And nobody cared. You could talk all day long about how good you are or how much you changed, but you have to show people. So I would just remember that actions speak louder than words, and people are watching and judging, and it's up to you to prove them wrong. And but it comes down to you don't want to change for other people, is that you want to change for yourself. If you're sick of being the person you are, then you have the ability to change it. And there's opportunities out there for people that want to work hard and change who they are. And the best thing is just to stay as positive as possible and don't think about the past anymore. You can't change the past. You can only learn from it and you can move on. So don't beat yourself up. We've all made bad decisions, but what you do with those decisions moving forward is what's going to make you a better person. And like Rocky Balboa said, it's not how hard you get hit, it's how hard you get hit and get back up. And that's definitely something that I instilled in my sons. But there is hope, and certainly if I could do anything to help somebody, just you can find where I am, and I'll help you out as much as I can. Because the one thing I learned is if I could go through this bad situation and come out a better person and help people, then maybe the situation wasn't so bad, and it happened for a reason.
Drew, thank you. I so much appreciate your time on this, and I know I can see right now that this is going to be a popular episode because it's your straightforward talk and also a career that's of interest to people. So I want to give kind of a public service announcement here that we get, without exaggeration, we get a stack of letters like this every week. And I am grateful for that because I know what it means on the inside to put a stamp on an envelope. Uh, it's a stamp instead of a soup. And so I appreciate that. But if you want to write to us, it's the Path Forward Podcast, P.O. Box 3411, Peachtree, one word, Peachtree City, Georgia, 30269. And let's say that you want to write to us because you want to ask Drew some questions about the career in trucking. Just write to us, and on the inside say, please forward this to Drew, and we absolutely will. And Drew will then respond to it when he can. I mean, obviously he's on the road a lot, but so if there's anything we can do, if there's any guests that you would recommend that we would want to talk to, people that you knew on the inside that are now on the outside and they're involved in something that their story would be of interest on the inside, don't hesitate to drop us a note and tell us who they are, and we'll reach out to them. And again, want to thank you. We're coming up on, I guess we're not too far, about 15, 16 months into this podcast. We release a new episode every 2 weeks. And so we're going to be hitting our 50th episode not too long from now. So thank you very much for tuning in. This is the Path Forward Podcast. I'm your host, Augie Ghilarducci, and thank you for being here. We encourage you to look at the follow-up episode, which will release 2 weeks after you see this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Rocky.